Hi, Caroline. Lovely to be with you today, and thank you for taking the time to join me. I'm going to jump straight in. I thought it would be quite nice to start by talking a little bit about how you feel now about your role in actually in an academy trust. I think you've had a very career journey, haven't you? You actually started out as a teacher. You've worked in charities, in research, worked for a long time at the Key as head of education. So very much championing the teaching workforce, but in a commercial organization. And now head of public affairs at ARC. So now very much actually in an academy trust. And I just wondered, what are some of the things that maybe you've noticed or perhaps surprised you about actually being in that school trust environment?
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite, Liz. Wow, there's a lot there. As I said, squiggly career journey that had very much been on the sort of voluntary and public sector side of things until spending about 7 years at the Key in a variety of different roles. Um, and I think towards the end of my time there, I was spending a lot of time with sort of trust CEOs, really getting a sense of this is where innovation is coming from in the education sector. And I did some interesting work at the charity I worked for before the Key, bringing people in the voluntary sector and business closer together. And I think that's what you get, interestingly, within trust, because you have people who come up a sort of pure education journey, teachers, head teachers, CEOs, etc., directors of education. And you've got people who have come through from very different professional backgrounds, increasingly specialists, technicians who know their areas. And then you get this really interesting interplay between those two groups and the kind of spaces in between. And people from outside education can give a broader perspective on, oh, this is how we do people and operations in commercial setting. What can we learn about that and apply to education? I guess for me, I've always had more knowledge of the education side of things. My role at the King very much was to play back what's going on in the sector in terms of policy, but also practice in schools and think about how we then apply that to the content and the product that we're putting out there. So I'm very much for the educationalists and of the educationalists. But actually, I think for me, being in a more commercial environment, where you've got limited time and resources as a given, and efficiency are like a really key part of that. And, whether that is about reducing the cost of your operations so that you can increase your profit. I think that's how a lot of people think about commercial organization. But actually, we just obsessed about how to make the best stuff for schools that was really going to solve their problems, to really understand what the issues were and respond to those. So I think coming into a trust and having felt very much like the sort of person for education and the kids, and what are we going to do about all these problems besetting the system at the Key, coming into a trust and feeling like, actually, I must have soaked up some business learning from time at the Key and saying, but why are we doing this? And what is the impact? And how are we thinking about this strategically rather than rushing into activity? And I think schools are very different to businesses. I think that's fair to say. And there's probably people watching this going, what is she talking about? Schools are very different to businesses. Okay. We don't have an option not to do things. We can't specialize to the degree that you would if you were running something commercial. We've got to do all of the subjects, all of the sport, all of the other things. Like, yeah. So then also, we can't turn off the machine and reboot it. We can't redesign our factory. We can't stop production, stop sending us children while we just rewire everything. There has to be a measure of both. And I think about like how much of your time is taken up with your business as usual activity, like the things that you have to do, and then where are you putting thought to innovation and improvement, and what does that look like, and the balance between the two, really. And I guess a lot of what I do in my role is scanning the horizon and seeing, oh gosh, what's this going on over here? This new policy, this new bit of research, and filtering and working out, like, is this something that colleagues would benefit from engaging with? To what extent can I sense check it and see, oh, actually, this is worth their time and their trouble? Because it's really easy to be distracted by the next new thing just popping up here. And so, yeah, I think it's that the, I guess the sort of the holy grail is creating a sort of structural, strategic approach to things that takes account of the fact that there will just be a lot of stuff that you can't necessarily contain and control in the way that you want to, that will be reacting to things because you're dealing with human beings. You're not creating a factory environment or just a digital realm or whatever. You're dealing with children and you're dealing with staff. And so sort of the best intentions about being super, super focused, from a head teacher and who then all of a sudden just have a parent in tears in their office or a really difficult complaint or whatever, you've got to respond. So it's very much the balance because schools aren't unlike many other organizations. Can't just read some generic kind of management advice book and apply it straight to a school. Being
No,
honest.
absolutely. No, that's right. I think, because aren't they? Yeah, schools are very much about relationships, about human beings, and they are often just a huge number of interactions, aren't there, on a daily basis? And that's, I think, one of the things that characterizes life, say, as a teacher, isn't it, over many other roles? It's just the the sheer number of conversations and interactions that take place in a day. And yes, you're right. You can't. And sometimes those interactions are very important, aren't they? And as teachers, you've got the opportunity to make a difference to a child's day in how he reacts to something. Or yes, as a head teacher, maybe taking that time to have a conversation with a parent now might save, yeah, I don't know, more serious complaint further down the line. Yeah. But
I think
yes,
stories. I think it's about knowing when to have a sort of a system and a process for things and knowing when you just have to jump in and do it anyway. I think that's what I find really fascinating about the role of a sort of school business leader, because particularly in some settings where they're just taking on almost everything that isn't technically education. And you could be 1 minute dealing with millions in your management accounts. And the next moment, a bit of the roof has fallen into the playground or something like that. And you're just going to have to get out there and you're going to have to sort it out. And I think what causes a lot of stress and anxiety sometimes can be people doing things that they passionately feel are not their jobs or going, I haven't done X or Y because I've done this thing. And that's somehow a personal failure. I think you have to embrace the variety and the nature of it and go, that definitely needs doing. Like I had to put some tape up and get kids away from the roof or whatever it was. So it's your job. And I think the same is true with teachers as well. We obviously teachers are having to do a lot more pastoral work, help children and families in different ways. But being constantly told that they shouldn't be doing that is part of what creates the tension and the stress, I think. If you'd say to somebody, okay, you haven't planned the wittiest lesson you could have planned for Thursday, but you help this person here and now, and that's fine. Like, it's not possible to do the degree you might want.
that's right. Yes, not a place for perfectionism. I feel like teaching and perfection, yes, not a great combination. And sometimes as well, I think it's hard, isn't it, to decide in that situation, what is the best or most valuable use of my time? Is it, yeah, getting on the phone to talk to to some parents about what happened in the lesson today? Is it marking some books? Is it planning for tomorrow's lesson? And I suppose that's probably perhaps similar as well. School business leaders or head teachers, again, aren't they? There's all these multiplicity of different things on their plate. Do you have any ideas now about if we're going to, value our time is one of the most precious resources, is I suppose people working in schools have. How do you go about working out what's the best use of your time at that moment?
And I think that's a really great question. And I have to caveat this by saying, like, I'm no expert in productivity, but I think there is an important balance to be struck. And again, I think this is this speaks to the fact you can't turn off the machine necessarily around what is improving your systems and processes and where do you need to invest time in doing that well, be that sort of researching practice from other places, doing kind of taking that time out so that you can think about, okay, that I've got to spend time, but this will save me time or money or whatever it might be further down the way. Like ring fencing that and making sure that it isn't the thing that drops off your to-do list every week. I think that's really important. And it's hard to plan for the long term in schools. We know finance is really difficult to budget beyond the here and now in lots of cases. But I think particularly leaders with more of a strategic responsibility, taking that time, having that plan, having a sense of what, when you do get the opportunity, what would you do? I think is really important because it can be very motivational as well to see a bigger shift and the result of that kind of that sort of thoughtful high level work. A lot of it is about understanding the rhythm of the day in school. Obviously, it's that, as we said, as human beings, it's totally unpredictable. Anything can happen at any time. But we do know the parts of the school day where things are more likely to happen. And I think doing a task at that moment that you can easily stop and wade into whatever is occurring is better than you're trying to do something urgently that has to be done today at the same time as 5 people are shouting at you. So there's definitely something about working with the pattern of your day and the rhythm of the year as well. In contrast to teachers having that more structured time in the holidays when you might be supervising construction projects or doing whatever else in the building, like really think about how you can optimize your use of that quieter time for those bigger tasks. So I think, yeah, very much going with the kind of the rhythm of the day, the rhythm of the year for planning when you're do things. And I think, again, on that sort of motivation point, I just tend to have, depending on the day, 1, 2, or 3 things, depending on what else is in my diary, that just I have to get done that day. Might be big, might be little. But knowing that when you do find the time, that's the thing you're going to prioritize. So you're not, when you sit down at your screen again, going, oh, what was I supposed to be doing? What am I, no, it's going to be that thing. And at the end of the day, I've done something, even if I've done 20,000 other things, I got something done that I wanted to get done and keeping that motivation going. And again, if you're looking more forensically at your calendar and how you're allocating time across the week, think about what are the things that you really need to be doing, your objectives, the things that you really want to move forward on, and working out like what percentage of your week do you think you should be spending on that? Then what percentage of your week are you? What is stopping you? And who else could be doing that work? Because the other thing is, much as I've said, schools are schools, and we've all been there doing something, mopping something up off the floor, helping somebody whatever. We've all been there. Let's not feel embarrassed or bad about it. But somebody who's a school business leader knows as much as anybody, anybody, and really think about who is doing which work and why. There are things that can be done by other people that can be arranged differently, particularly thinking about your senior leaders. Like, where do they spend their time? Where can they make the biggest difference doing that? And can you justify it? And anyone who's been through integrated curriculum financial planning or similar, when you actually do start to look at the numbers and who's spending time doing what, it's something that you can then think and apply to your own circumstances as well. Because as much as we don't like to think about it, like this is the reality of managing your human resource, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, it might be an interesting exercise at some point to do to, tot up the value of a meeting or the cost of a meeting in terms of people
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's what's interesting about particularly the education sector's experience of COVID. We did things on Teams that was very alien to a lot of people. That's all done now. We can do things face to face. We're all in the building or thereabouts. Let's have a face to face meeting. And those are really important and really necessary sometimes. But looking at different kinds of models for exchanging information and sharing information, I think particularly because a lot of meetings, that's what they start with, isn't it? People updating on what they've been doing and that kind of thing. And, yes, people are well able to do that and they don't have to prepare in advance for it, say. But if there was a document or a message, like instant message type Teams type thing, where people could put, here are 5 things I did last week, and here are 2 things I'm worried about this week, or whatever, you could get cracking on that straight away. And you're not necessarily having the time to chat. But yeah, I think you're right. The cost of meetings, and it's all the associated faffing that goes with it. Somebody changing the time and mixing it around and like all of the emails that fly. Definitely a difference between working in a commercial organization that had basically killed internal email because we
Really?
just used Slack,
Yeah.
our instant messaging thing, to working in a multi-academy trust. That was a big shock to my inbox. A lot of email.
Yes, that's right. Actually, I've seen some people now have messages on their emails also about we could think about it in planet terms too. Every
Mhm.
time we send an email, there is a little energy cost. So that could be another
Yeah.
motivator to think, do we really need to send it? Do we really need to reply?
And I think it gives the illusion of stuff happening again. Like you feel like, oh, I responded to this email. But when people are doing it on the fly, as they often are, walking around on their phone, wherever, at home, if they're not fully focusing and actually responding to every point, or you can then unleash a whole load more emails because someone's going, hang on a minute, you haven't really understood this. Actually, I meant the other. No. So it's quite alluring because it feels like it's one of those things that's sort of weighing on you. How many unread emails have you got in your inbox? But it isn't always activity that benefits chipping in on every little thing and responding to everything. But it's super hard to do. These systems are set up to attract us to interact with them, aren't they? It's true, very hard.
Yes. And then, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think at the time which we're talking, the Education Supports Teacher Wellbeing Index for 2024 has just come out. And there's still, isn't it, particularly, it seems, for the senior leaders, the rates of burnout and exhaustion are high. So it does feel like we need to do something to try and, yeah, reduce some of those time commitments or the intensity, something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, the way that particularly, I think email extends beyond the end of the working day. So even if you're leaving school a bit later and feeling, yeah, that's where things done for today, you might get more email building up overnight. Some people log on at ridiculous hours of the morning, and then you got to go, oh, and I've got all of this stuff to deal with. And I always think back to many years ago when I was doing my work experience at a magistrate's court. And on the first thing we would do every day at about like 10 was open the letters and parcel them out, put them in people's in trays. And because I'm that old, like that was how new information came into the organization and went out again. And it's amazing to think about like exactly how quick responses and reactions and stuff can fly about over email. But you get frustrated. You think, really, what I just like to do is take a minute, work out what this is, what I really need to do to it, and not just feel pressured into thinking about. But yeah, and I think it is that sort of things getting on top of you or feeling like there's things that you haven't responded to. Although, and genuinely, I'd say this is someone who's the chair of governance, works very closely with a head teacher. Sometimes you could just be, what is this next? This is next awful thing that's hitting this inbox in the inbox. So I think again, the psychological impact of that going, oh, I've suddenly got a complaint from an irate parent or whatever. If you're not at work, don't bring that into your evening. Don't be looking at your email as just spending time with your family and now you've got something horrible to deal with when you're going the next day. Yeah, I think it's very tempting, but try and be strong and leave it alone, I would say.
Yeah, choose my preference has always been I have my work emails on my phone, but no notifications.
Mm,
So if I go and look at them, it's because it's convenient to me to do.
absolutely. I'm the same. I think that's really important. Good advice.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I imagine, yes, in your as chair of governors, you're working in quite a different sort of school context, aren't you? In a local authority school, where I suppose there you've got the head teacher, yeah, who is they are the almost the one person band. And you're right, when it's something like a complaint coming in, these things can really take up time, can't they, and disrupt the flow.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like anyone to think that we're just wallowing in complaints on a daily basis. When they happen, we take them very seriously. We're a local authority school in Hackney, and we have quite a lot of additional funding for SEND. We have a resource base, and we have a really high number of children with EHCP, very complex cohorts. We have a large leadership team, and from a budget perspective, we're able to offer them all flexible working, which has made a huge difference. And our head is 4 days a week. The deputy is substantive head on the day that she's not in, and will by and large just deal with everything. And I think again, if you are in a structure like that, and it's possible to say, and I'm not going to be involved in this, and you are, and not have endless people on the CCs, you can definitely make people feel empowered to take decisions. And we've done a lot as both as governing board, but then and also as a leadership team to give people the confidence they know that the head is still there to check in whenever. I am still there as chair to check in whenever, but my committee chairs and other senior leaders really happy to just get on with it. And I think that makes a difference if you can genuinely give work away. And it's hard, particularly if you're in a school business leadership situation and you feel responsible for a lot of compliance issues and you want to reassure yourself that things have been done and they've been done to the highest standard, but actually genuinely making people feel that they have some autonomy and they can make decisions and that they have your trust will be much better for them and much better for you in the long run. So if it's a training need, address it. If it's confidence on their part, address it. But I think being able to genuinely delegate is a way to create time where there was no time before.
Yes, yeah. And I think because also if people don't feel empowered to make decisions, that can almost then lead to inertia, can't it? And then they can't do anything without asking someone else and checking with someone else. And again, it's a massive suck up of time, isn't it, too? And actually, I think what's great as well is to hear that in the school you've got flexible working on the part of senior leader, head teacher working in practice. Because I think one of the things I feel I'm hearing from the profession often is that actually there's still in some places a perception that you can't be a senior leader and work part-time. It's good to hear you've got that actually working well.
Absolutely. And again, I'm sure people will be listening to this again. I cannot imagine that adding up. We are like relatively well funded per head. We've got 50% people premium. We have got really high incidence of children with special educational need, and strong leadership input is key to how we manage that complexity of the cohort. But even that said, our model is adaptive, and sometimes we need more people, more time in the classroom, some more time on leadership. And it's been a really important retention strategy for us. And we've got great retention among senior staff as a result of it. But it isn't necessarily an option that people feel is available to them. And there's a cultural piece, because if the head wasn't in a position where she wanted to work flexibly, it might be quite different. And it's definitely a mindset that comes up from people that it's not possible. So I think people do have to see it to believe it. But I did meet an amazing head teacher who offered flexible working to anybody and everybody in school, and really had done a lot to build up a culture around it. Isn't just parents or people with caring responsibilities. And what are people's passions and dreams? Somebody who wanted to do mountain rescue a day a week, but also how fascinating and brilliant and great stories for them to bring to children, and the other skills that meant they could maybe take groups out and things like this. As somebody was training to become a nutritionist, and they were doing their course, but it meant they were going to stay in teaching for another 2 years while also doing their course. Again, I think it's expanding people's ideas around who needs it, who wants it, and what other benefits and skills can that bring back into the organization as well. I say all of this well aware, couldn't be more aware of the financial backdrop in schools just now.
But it's great to hear those examples. And yes, it's not an easy time. Easy. Thank you so much, Caroline. You've given us lots of food for thought. Good.
Thank you. Goodbye.